What is up guys, it's your boy Solheim here, back with another Classic WoW video for Mists of Pandaria Classic, and today we are making the ultimate tier list for Mists of Pandaria Classic. We're basically going to be ranking every single spec/class/role in Mists of Pandaria Classic, so there's going to be DPS rankings, healer rankings, and tank rankings. Actually, to put it in the right order, first of all we're going to look at DPS and make a tier list for DPS, then we're going to make a tier list for tanks, and then finally there's going to be one for healers as well. So there you go, now you know what the order they are coming in, so DPS first, tanks number 2, and healers at the end of the video as well. So that way you can just skip ahead to the tier list that you are most interested in, whether you're a DPS player, a tank player, or a healer. I should also say that these tier lists will be based on PvE content, so we're talking about challenge mode dungeons, regular dungeons, heroic dungeons, scenarios, and raids. Basically, once again, PvE content. I also just want to mention real fast that I do have a goldmaking guide for Mists of Pandaria as well right now, so if you buy this guide you also get the Cataclysm one for free in the same purchase, giving you 2 guides for the price of 1, and you can find more information on the gold guide down below in the video description. I'm not gonna waste your time talking too much about it right now, because we are going to get right into making some tier lists. Here we go. So here we have the tier list, and when it comes to talking about a spec, like let's just say that I'm talking about warlocks, I'm not gonna rank both affliction and destruction, because chances are that some, like for example some fights, affliction will do better than destruction, but on the next fight destruction might do better than affliction. So for classes that have the same kind of role, like destruction and affliction has the same role, so I'm not going to rank both, but I'm going to put one of them up here and talk a little bit about the other specs. So this right here would be the warlock class and the warlock spec, and the same thing goes for hunters. Instead of ranking both marksmanship, beast mastery, and survival, I'm just going to put them all together into one, because if one spec performs better on one boss fight, but then a different spec performs better on a different boss fight, it doesn't really matter to you, because you're probably gonna have a dual talent specialization anyway, and the same thing goes for warlocks. Like once again pulling up the same example, where destruction performs well on boss 1, but affliction performs well on boss 2, you're probably gonna end up playing both with dual talent. So with that being said, let's get into it. Actually, before we get into it, there's 2 classes where that will be different, as the 2 DPS specs they have is completely different, and that's going to be, for example, druids, where 1 DPS spec is ranged using spell power, and 1 DPS spec is feral, melee, using agility and attack power. So in this case I will be ranking both feral and boomkin, and that's kind of why I'm using these right here, like these talent icons, instead of just the class icons, okay? So with that being said, what I'm going to be basing this off of is logs. In this case we have the actual logs from Mists of Pandaria back in the day, so we can take a look at those. Not there, but here we have a bunch of logs. Here we have the logs from Throne of Thunder, and we can see the all-star DPSs from back then, and I personally think that if we're taking a look at original Mists of Pandaria, Throne of Thunder and the Siege of Orgrimmar are the most important ones to look at, because when it comes to Classic WoW, we'll be running this based off of patch 5.4 and build 5.4. That means that classes will be working the way they were working in the final build of Mists of Pandaria Classic. That means that classes that were topping DPS in Mogu'shan Vaults back in Mists of Pandaria are likely not going to top it this time, just because certain classes will be performing way better this time around. One perfect example of that is Warriors, where in original Mists of Pandaria, in the first phase, or the first couple of raid tiers, Warriors were not really that good. But then, later in the expansion, they got a lot of class changes to them, to where warriors are now really, really good. And the same thing goes for early on as well, like phase 1 of Mists of Pandaria, warriors are very likely going to be quite strong. Meanwhile, back in Mogu'shan Vaults, they actually were quite weak in comparison. So things will be different. We also have, for example here, Throne of Thunder once again. You can see all the classes right here in the top 100 basically, and we have a vast diversity of classes here. The same thing goes for Siege of Orgrimmar right here as well, a bunch of different classes, but some of them will be in both. Now, I'm also just going to say, tier lists are always speculative, so chances are this tier list could be absolutely irrelevant when Mists of Pandaria comes out, and certain classes could be in completely different places on the tier list, but there are a couple of classes that I'm quite sure about when it comes to their placement. Either way, let's get into it, and let me know what your tier list looks like in the comments as we go through this. So if you have any problems with my tier list, then just let me know how yours would look like in the comments. Either way, let's go. So the first class that really go into the S tier here is probably the most obvious class to put into S tier. That's going to be the Warlocks. And if we go over to the logs real quick, we can take a look at where the Warlocks have usually been performing, or where they have been topping the damage. So if we just go over here for a quick second, taking a look at logs once again, this right here is Throne of Thunder. This is the first boss, Warlocks. Second boss, Warlocks. Third boss, Warlocks. Fourth boss, Warlocks. Every single boss, Warlocks are topping the DPS meters, and they're rarely ever contested. And this right here kind of just proves why, like, I don't want to put Affliction versus Destruction in certain places, because you might just swap back and forth. So you can see every single boss so far, Affliction has been absolutely dominant, and then suddenly on Lei Shen we see 2 Destruction Warlocks being top DPS as well, and we even see a Demonology Warlock, so you're likely just going to swap back and forth based on the specs you have and based on, well, their actual performance. Either way, there is not a single boss in Throne of Thunder that Warlocks were not in the top 10, and they were always top 1, except for Jikun, where there's 2 mages above these 2 Warlocks. And if we go over to Siege of Orgrimmar, it's going to be the same story, but some other classes are contending every now and then, but Warlocks are very often in the top 10. So here we have Warlocks once again, both Demonology and Destruction, and here we have a couple of bosses with no Warlocks like this one, Arcane and Fire Mage, and Boomkin, huge AoE fight by the way, so obviously AoE is king on this fight. Here we have once again AoE fight as well, so we have Boomkins, we have the Unholy DKs, and here we have Shah of Pride, Warlocks, what a shock. Gallocrass, Warlocks again, and here we have Affliction Warlocks on the fight before, and then Destruction on this fight. Then we have Warlocks, big shock, right? And as we scroll down to Malgorok, once again, Warlocks down here as well. Over here, Thok, Warlocks, Siegecrafter, 1 Warlock but mostly AoE fight. Then we have Paragons, 1 Warlock here as well, but once again, mostly an AoE fight. And on Garrosh we have Boomkins, Warriors, and a Mage. But usually, Warlocks are in the top 10, and Throne of Thunder they absolutely smack. So if I had to put one class into S tier, no questions asked, that is going to be the Warlock for me. That one absolutely deserves S tier, in my opinion, even though there are a couple of more classes that do deserve to be ranked into the S tier as well. But I kind of just want to reiterate that there will be quite a big jump between some of these classes. So next up then, we can take a look at Hunters in Mists of Pandaria, and Hunters actually also performs quite well. Referencing back to the logs I just talked about, they're usually in the top 10 in many of the fights, and at the beginning of the video it took a look at the top 10 in both Throne of Thunder and Siege of Orgrimmar. If we scroll even further down, Hunters are usually in the top 25, and once again performing quite well. Hunters are also very good just due to the jobs they can perform inside both raids and in dungeons. They can help you pull, help you gain threat, misdirect, there's a bunch of things Hunters can do, combined with their actual very good damage output. It is not just their damage, it's their crowd control and everything else. Hunters are a very solid choice, and you can say that Hunters are also S tier, but I should say there's quite a big jump between Warlocks and Hunters, and there's a big part of me that kind of wants to put Hunters in the A tier and have Warlocks almost be the only S tier class. So I might just do that for now, but we'll see if I make any changes, okay? So Hunters are going to be an A tier for now, but I'm just going to say it's a pretty strong class. Next up then, we have Rogues, and Rogues also are very strong in Mists of Pandaria Classic. Once again, I'm just going to put one icon for Rogues up there, but this goes for every single spec, because the spec you will play will be different from phase to phase. In phase 1 you might play one spec, and then in phase 2 you might play a different spec, but they all work roughly the same. So once again, just putting one icon up there, not gonna rank every single spec individually, because they just change way too much from phase to phase, based on the trinkets you get, based on the weapons you get, and based on your set bonus as well from that raid tier. Either way, rogues are very strong in Mists of Pandaria. Some people might put them above hunters, but I personally don't, and well, it's a really good class. It was also my main back in Mists of Pandaria, so I might be a little bit biased here, but I love rogues. Next up then, a class that is usually a crown favorite, especially in the comments, ever since Classic WoW, and you know what I'm talking about here. We're going to talk about the Warrior. In this case, Warriors will be quite good in Mists of Pandaria Classic, because we are once again basing this off of the last patch in Mists of Pandaria Classic. In that case, Warriors got buffed quite a bit, because they weren't really that strong at the beginning of original Mists of Pandaria, but as we went through the raid tiers, they became stronger and stronger, and ultimately started topping the DPS meters. Even going back and looking at Garrosh, for example, there's quite a few good fights where Warriors performed really well. I mean, we just looked at the logs, right? So Warriors, to me, where they are here depends a little bit on the phase we're playing in, and they do get better and better throughout the expansion, at least usually they do, but to me, I'm gonna put them into the A tier, and even though I'm a rogue main, this hurts a little bit, but to me, actually, nah, rogues are better than warriors. Warriors are they're right behind rogues though. So to me, I feel like this right here makes sense. I mean, if we go back and look at logs, rogues are performing quite well in Mists of Pandaria. It is a very good class that also just gets better and better, but even then performs very good in phase 1 as well. This one I could be definitely wrong on, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. It could end up looking like this, where warriors are better than rogues, but for now I'm gonna follow my gut feeling and put them right behind rogues. And one more class that I do want to put up in the A tier is going to be the mage, and mages are very strong as well. Fire is absolutely topping DPS by the end. When we get to Siege of Orgrimmar on those AoE fights, fire mages are insane, and even Frost and Arcane are pretty good single target as well, but they're insane on AoE fights. So mages, you want to bring one of them pretty much all the time anyway. They are very good, they have a bunch of things accessible in their toolkit, and it's one of those classes that can do very good DPS while performing jobs. You can even do soak mechanics, you can blink, you have so many things, like such a good toolkit as well. I feel like mages have been loved ever since Vanilla WoW, and Blizzard just never stopped loving mages. Either way, I want to put them right up there next to warriors, but definitely at the bottom of the A tier in my experience. So far, this is what I would rank them. Now, there is one more class here that definitely should be in the A tier, and that's gonna be Shamans. And for Shamans we have two specs, so Elemental should definitely be in the A tier. And I'm just gonna say Elemental is quite a strong spec that will very likely outperform mages in Mists of Pandaria, and will also very likely outperform warriors as well. So for me, Elemental Shamans are going to be right behind rogues in the A tier, so basically number 1 is going to be warlocks, number 2 hunters, number 3 rogues, and then number 4 elemental shamans, number 5 warriors, and then number 6 mages. At this point we still have a couple more classes to go through, so let's start talking about the other classes as well. In this case we do have one that, this one might be a little bit... Let me know what you think about monks. I'm gonna put them into C tier for now, and then I'm gonna go to B tier. Because a very good monk doesn't really even have to be very good, just has to know their class. They can do a lot of damage, and by popping Tiger's Eye Brew at the right time, they can pump out a lot of damage when necessary, because they can basically build up Tiger's Eye Brew. I think it's called Tiger's Eye Brew, right? Giving you the damage increase. So the more combo points you spend as a Windwalker monk, you build up stacks of a Tiger's Eye Brew that you can then pop for a 50% damage increase at a given time, which means if you need to do damage at a certain time of a boss fight, you can use your Tiger's Eye Brew at that point. So if one of the bosses gets a damage taken debuff, you can basically charge up all of your damage for that window, and you can even combine that with trinket usage, and by learning how to pop your Tiger's Eye Brew at the right time, you can top DPS and do a lot of damage when that damage is actually needed for every single boss fight. And once again, if you have those unused trinkets, the difference between a bad monk and a good monk, a bad monk will use this Iron Tiger's Eye Brew at any time they have it. Meanwhile, a good monk will use it with their trinkets. So when you happen to get one of those unused effects giving you, for example, 2000 agility or 3000 agility, pop a potion and then use Tiger's Eye Brew, and it will give you an insane damage increase. So monks can be very good if played correctly. Next up then, we can talk about the other classes as well. So here we have DK that I'm going to be ranking first, and DK I'm going to put right up here next to Windwalker. So for DKs, they will be very, very good towards the end of the expansion, and based on the build we're running on, that also means they're going to be decent throughout the entire expansion. But in Siege of Orgrimmar, you will see quite a few DKs topping those DPS meters. It's a very good class to bring, both for single target scenarios and for AoE cleave. It's just a very good class to have in general, and you will see multiple fights where unholy DKs are topping DPS right next to, for example, Boomkins, warlocks, and even fire mages, and sometimes even warriors. So it's a class you will see on the top of the DPS meters quite often in certain boss fights. And one more class that I'm going to put right into B tier as well is going to be the Boomkin. Well, that's not really a class, it's a spec. Either way, Boomkins are very good, but I will say Boomkins are better on AoE fights, so you really want to bring them for those AoE fights. The good thing here is that pretty much every single raid has at least one, if not even multiple AoE fights, so people want to bring Boomkins for almost every single raid anyway. It's a pretty good class to have, brings like that Boomkin aura, and well, it's a good class to have for AoE cleave, and it's not bad single target either, but definitely not top DPS when it comes to single target. That being said, on cleave fights it can be top DPS, but on actual AoE fights it's quite often beaten by fire mages, which is why fire mages is one tier above. Then we have the other melee classes as well, where we have, for example, Feral Druid, we have Ret Paladins, and we have Enhancement Shamans, and for this, they're all gonna go into the same tier, which is right under these guys. And in this case, I don't really have that much to say, other than looking at logs and my own experience playing various servers out there. They usually just don't perform as well as the classes that I've put above here, and that, I don't really have much more to say than that. Once again, we have the logs, we have the numbers. I'm just gonna say once again, even though they are ranked into C tier, I have intentionally put only one class into S tier so far, and I could easily throw these guys up into B tier, because they're not bad, but I'm just trying to signal that they are slightly worse than the other classes, and usually performs slightly worse as well. But the reality is, for Mists of Pandaria, you can pick any class you want, and you're likely going to be fine. All classes do perform okay. So at this point, there's only really one class that I haven't put anywhere, and that's going to be Shadow Priests. Now for Shadow Priest, they are a wild card. They can be put really far down on the list, or they can be put quite far up the list. It just depends on, well, who you are as a person, and what you're trying to do. So for most people, Shadow Priests are likely going to be about here, so like a high C tier class. But if you're a good Shadow Priest and like a top rank player or a top skill player, you can even put Shadow Priest all the way up here as a contender with Boomkins, and for single target damage can even be above Boomkins as well. Shadow Priest can be a contender for top DPS, it just depends on the fight, but for most people I would say that Shadow Priest should be down here as part of the bottom 4 classes. So I do believe that so far we have covered everything in terms of class, right? And their specs where necessary. We have both Feral Druid, we have Boomkin, we have Elemental Shaman and Huntsman Shaman, and then we have every single class. So once again, if your tier list looks different than mine when it comes to DPS, then let me know how wrong and stupid I am in the comments down below, and we will see what happens when Mists of Pandaria comes out. I just want to reiterate that all of this is purely speculative, but based on some of the numbers that we do have available, and based on myself playing the expansion for a little bit too much time at the moment. So looking at, for example, Throne of Thunder, we can take a look at the tanks here, and this one right here is based on performance and execution, and also based on DPS. So you can see the all-stars for tanks. Number 1 we have Paladin, number 2 we have Blood DK, number 3 we have Guardian Druid, then we have a couple of monks, as you can see on the screen. Then we can go to the next one, which is Siege of Orgrimmar, the final raid we have. Number 1 is Prot Paladin, number 2 is Brewmaster Monk, number 3 is Paladin, number 4 is Paladin, and if you take a look here, you have a bunch of tanks and how they performed in Siege of Orgrimmar as well, in which case Paladins are doing really well, monks are doing really well, but what you can see here is that in the top 11, we have every single tank, so no matter what tank you pick, you will probably be good, but obviously, some tanks are better than others. So when it comes to this tier list as well, like even if I place a couple of tanks into the S tier, and you want to play one of the tanks that are in A tier, don't feel like the S tier tanks, like don't feel like you have to reroll, you will very likely be fine. Once again, in the top 11 we saw every single tank class, so chances are that no matter what tank you play, you will be fine. It is just that once again different tanks are better in different scenarios. You have AoE tanks, single target tanks, you have tanks that can sustain very good damage output where they do damage, so if your role as a tank is to deal damage, then the whole kind of tier list changes as well, because I'm just going to spoil it right now, like Prot Paladins for example, they are not going to be an S tier class or S tier tank here, but if it was based on damage, Paladins are very good at dealing damage, and the same thing goes for Prot Warriors. Okay, so let's start this off, as I'm probably going to put your favorite tank into the completely wrong place, based on your opinion versus my opinion, so once again I'm going to talk a little bit while I rank these, just to give you a reason for why I'm putting this class, or this spec, where I'm putting it. So let's start off with DK. In this case, we have Blood DKs as the tank, and DKs are really strong tanks in Mists of Pandaria, and they will be very strong tanks in Mists of Pandaria Classic as well. Now, this right here depends a little bit on what you want to accomplish from the game itself. If you're a speedrunner, chances are you might run something else, like a Prot Paladin or a Prot Warrior, based on, in that case, you want your tanks to do a lot of damage. You might also run a Blood DK for survival. I have no idea what the speedrun comps will look like, because I have never really been in a speedrun where they're clearing a raid in 20-30 minutes, which is insane to me, because first of all, you want the tank to do damage, but you also want him to survive, because they're pulling the entire raid. But when it comes to actual gameplay for about 95% of people, DKs is a very solid choice. They can survive a bunch of hits, they have one of the biggest survivability in the game, but the one drawback here that could make this an A tier tank if played by the wrong person is that you have to use your cooldown accordingly, your cooldowns. You need to know what buttons to press and when to press them, and a good Blood DK will easily be S tier, meanwhile a bad DK will be A or B tier. That being said, it's a very kind of noob-friendly class as well, because even if you are a bad tank, Blood DK is somewhat easy to learn, but very difficult to master. So, once again, good DK tank will be S tier, but if you're not a good DK tank, then you're probably going to be A tier. I just want to get that out there, because even though I rank them into S tier, that doesn't mean that every Blood DK you see will be an S tier tank. Now, I'm also going to try to listen to some feedback on my previous tier list here, because in the previous tier list, I usually rank a bunch of classes quite high, and I don't really spread my tiers out that much, and the reason why is that I personally think almost every class has something unique to bring to the table that makes them very good, but in this case I'm going to try to spread things out a little bit more, just to appease that audience I guess, but also because, well, some tanks will be better than others, and I'm just going to talk about why I'm putting them into the tier that I'm putting them in. So after we have now ranked this class right here, the next class we're going to be ranking is the Monk class, and this is probably where a couple of you guys might disagree with me, which is completely fine. So I'm going to talk while I'm putting the tank here, but I'm going to put Monk tanks into A tier, but I'm going to do so while also vocally saying that if played by the right person, Monk tanks are S tier above Blood DKs. Monk tanks is arguably one of the best tanks in the game, but requires a whole lot of knowledge. You need to know what buttons to press, when to press them, and you have way more things to press than a Blood DK, I feel like. There's way more buttons to press and you have way more things to think about, but it's also a huge toolkit. Like, if you master the Monk, you will be an insane tank. They are also very good for challenge mode dungeons, for example, because they can do a bunch of damage at the same time, so they survive a lot, plus they do damage, plus you can even speed yourself up through rolling and the momentum talent to give you a permanent speed increase, pretty much. Flying Serpent Kick as well. You also have, well, actually that's a Windwalker, right? But you also have a strong CC through paralysis when you're playing a monk as well, like a monk tank. And yeah, monks are just very, very good in general. They also have access to pretty insane talents that makes them very good as well. Like, even Ring of Peace, right? Having Ring of Peace is absolutely insane for monks and gives you a lot of crowd control. You can also use Leg Sweep for like an AoE stun if you want that as well. Monk tanks in general are just a very, very solid choice. They also have a bunch of self-healing, but the one big thing about monk tanks, in my opinion, is the fact that they can survive big hits. One of the big things about monks is the staggering damage effect, where instead of taking all the damage at once, they stagger the damage, taking a little bit over time, making them very easy to heal. But once again, the reason why I'm not placing the monk tank into the AS tier here is that they are very difficult to master, and it's just a much less noob-friendly class, because it takes a lot to learn, and it's a whole new class to the game. So you have to, first of all, learn the class, then you have to learn your spec, and then you have to get comfortable pulling as your spec as well, and taking on a very, very important role as a tank. So the main reason why I'm placing the DK over the monk here is that it's a very sustainable class, and it's much more friendly to 95% of the player base, to where they can learn the class even though they probably won't master the class. Meanwhile, monks have the potential to be better in most scenarios, by the way, like both single target, AoE, raids, dungeons, challenge modes. They have the potential to be better, but for a lot of people it's a very difficult class to play, and it doesn't just have a high skill ceiling, because the thing about DKs for me is that they have a pretty low skill floor, but a very high skill ceiling, which means it's pretty easy to be a okay DK tank. But for monks, I feel like even the skill ceiling is high, but even the skill floor is high as well, which is why I'm placing the monk here. Could be rage bait, but hey, let me know what you think in the comments. Next up then, I'm going to put two tanks into the same tier at the same time and talk about why they are being put there. So we're going to go for the Prot Warrior and the Prot Paladin, both into B tier. Now, which one should be at the front here really depends on what you are looking for, because in my experience, based on I've been playing, plus looking at the logs, and playing Mists of Pandaria back in the day as well, Prot Warriors brings more damage to the table, which also helps them like have more threat, and also tank damage is quite important due to the vengeance mechanic they're getting access to, but also, well, not just access to, but like it's being better this time, so tank damage is quite important. But paladin tanks have much better survival, especially in my opinion, plus they have a bunch more cooldowns that can be very helpful to the raid, like blessing of, well, different blessings really, that can save their party members, get them out of CCs, stuff like that. So paladins just feel like they bring more to the table when it comes to, first of all, being helpful, but also for you to survive and your party members to survive. So it feels like their survival is way better, meanwhile protection warriors have better damage output. That being said though, when you go to the tank rankings for example, you can see that the number 1 tank in Siege of Orgrimmar was a Prot Paladin, DPS wise by the way, and then number 3 and number 4 was also Prot Paladins when it comes to scoring on tanking in Siege, and even in Throne of Thunder, number 1 was a Prot Paladin, and if I'm not mistaken it's the same Prot Paladin as well. I mean, let's see here, Siege of Orgrimmar, yeah, same Prot Paladin back in Throne of Thunder and also Siege of Orgrimmar. But when it comes to looking at logs, they might also be a little bit skewed due to padding the meters from AoE fights and single target fights. So once again, in my experience, Prot Warriors tend to do a little bit more damage, meanwhile Prot Paladins seem to have a little bit more survival and brings more to the table when it comes to overall raid sustainability and raid survival, and has some pretty good cooldowns that they can press. Warriors as well has some cooldowns, but in my experience, Paladins have simply more. Then at the last then we have Guardian Druids. So Guardian Druids to me is going to be put into the C tier, and if anyone here is maining a Guardian, I know that right now you're probably going to rage like never before, but in my experience Guardian Druids just are not as good as the other four. There's no really other reason for why they're down here. I guess they don't have, like, comparing it to Paladins, they don't have the same amount of cooldowns, and comparing it to a Monk, well, Monks are more mobile, they are more survival, they have more damage output. It feels just like they are subpar in pretty much every single aspect of tanking. But that being said, once again, going back to the tank logs here, not this one but here, like, you don't have to scroll that far down to start finding Guardians. This right here, for example, Guardian Druid is number 3 and number 6 in Throne of Thunder. So even though I'm ranking them in the 4th spot here, C tier, they are not bad. Just in my experience, they're worse than the other, well, the other ones. So hey, at this point, if anyone here is playing a tank and have played a tank for quite a while on various servers out there, then tell me how wrong I am in the comments and why I'm wrong as well. I would love to hear that. Now, I do just want to say that anyone, before you comment down below how wrong I am, which I'm probably going to be anyway, I would want to say that on many private servers out there, the patches are completely different to how they will be in Classic. Once again, many private servers rolled out 5.0 and 5.1, so actual patches, the way they were back in the day. In Classic, things will work differently, based on the fact that we are running on the technically last patch, as we're running on patch 5.4, but getting it phased out. We have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, but we are working on the last stage of the class you play, the way the class was in 5.4. So chances are that even, like, let's just say Guardian Druids was technically best in slot in 5.1 back in the day, chances are they ended up getting nerfed over time, and they won't be best this time, just due to the fact that we are running on the nerfed version, and other tanks were buffed, and we are now running on that buffed version. Either way, all of this is completely speculative, and I just can't wait to see how things work out in Mists of Pandaria Classic, to see how right or how wrong I was, based on this tier list as well. It is also worth noting that I'm making this tier list as a whole of the expansion, so some of these tanks might be way worse in phase 1, meanwhile they might be very good in phase 6 or phase 5. So in phase 1, this tier list could be completely irrelevant, but once again, it's all speculative. Now, for this, I think it's important to talk a little bit about what healers' jobs are, and why they're being ranked in certain ways. So when it comes to healers in Mists of Pandaria, I'm going to be basing this, it's a PvE tier list by the way, not PvP, so like raids, dungeons, challenge modes, you name it, anything player versus environment. So when it comes to what healers are doing, it's obviously healing, that kind of goes into the name, but also healers actually start doing damage in Mists of Pandaria, which means that as a healer, you will not only be healing your team, you will also be damaging to help your team out by, like, damaging during any downtime. This is something that pro healers have been doing for quite a while, and there's a big emphasis on this starting already in Mists of Pandaria. Aside from that, it's also about healer cooldowns, so even though one healer might do really well when it comes to just straight up healing, they might be lacking cooldowns. Meanwhile, a different healer might do just as well in the healing front, but they have very important cooldown that can literally save the raid, or make the raid either take less damage or even deal more damage. So when it comes to healers, it's not just about the healing aspect, it's also about what they bring to the whole raid. Another factor that could be very important is the fact that Classic WoW usually runs on the last patch or the last build of the expansion. So for example, Mists of Pandaria Classic will be based on patch 5.4 and then releasing the content available in different phases. That means that even if a class was very good in original 5.1, that doesn't mean it's going to be good in phase 1 or phase 2 of Classic, because back then the class worked differently and probably got nerfed or buffed over time, so the fact that we're running on patch 5.4 will have a significant meaning when it comes to how your class performs this time around. So the classes that were actually good in original Mogushan Vaults are likely not going to be as good this time, and classes that, like, basically, things are going to be different this time than it was back in the day, because once again, we are running on the last patch. Either way, let's get into the tier list making here, but one more thing that I want to talk about that is kind of the basis of the tier list. So first of all, we have healing output, damage output, cooldowns, but we also have some data to back up how healers have been doing back in Mists of Pandaria. So for example, here is Throne of Thunder and how the healers were doing. Here we have the all-stars for healers, and you can see it's very, like, one-sided. There are 9 Discipline Priests on this list, and there's 1 Mistwalker Monk. You can also take a look at the healer, like the healing done here. This is based on healing done in Throne of Thunder. Once again, Discipline Priest is number 1, but then we have Holy Paladin number 2 and number 3, Mistweaver number 4, then we have 2 Shamans, a Paladin, Discipline Priest, 2 Paladins, and a Resto Druid. So in the top 11, we have every single healer represented, except I guess Holy Priest, but you already have Discipline Priest, so once again, pretty much every class has been represented so far in the top 11. Likewise, when we go to Siege of Orgrimmar, the last raid back in Mists of Pandaria, Mistweaver Monk was number 1 on the All-Stars for healers, then we had Discipline Priest be number 3, and then number 2, Resto Druid number 3, then we had the Mistweaver again, Discipline Priest, Resto Druid, and a Holy Paladin. So in the top 7, we already had all healers represented in the top 7, and if you go over to the actual healing output as well of Siege, we have Holy Priest number 1, Mistweaver number 2, Holy Paladin number 3, Resto Druid Disc. You can just see here, in the top 18, every single healer has been represented, and once again, all over here, like, it's pretty much all over the place. The only class that wasn't really on the list for quite a while was Shamans, but they're even number 18, and Shamans bring something pretty unique to the table. Like, they have a bunch of cooldowns that they bring, Spirit Link, other totems. Shamans are important. Either way, let's get into making a tier list. So I really just wanted to talk a little bit about all of that, because every single healer is very good in Mists of Pandaria, and even if your class is being ranked, for example, B tier, don't feel like you have to switch a class. That is not what tier lists are for. The tier lists are just to analyze based on which classes have been performing good and give you kind of a visualization of what to expect when it comes to performance. But even if a class is ranked B tier, it can provide pretty important utility to your raid. Either way, let's talk about number 1, so right into the S tier here, we're gonna have Discipline Priest. I mean, when we looked at the actual rankings here, Discipline Priest was represented in the top 3 pretty much every single time, and was even in one of the raids in top 10. There were 9 Discipline Priests in the top 10. Discipline Priests are very good because, first of all, they provide damage, they heal through damage. Atonement, for example, like, being a Discipline Priest in Mists of Pandaria, you're not just a good healer, it is a very fun healer to play, and in my experience, it's one of the most fun healers to play, or one of the most fun specs to play in the game ever. So for me, Discipline Priest, Mists of Pandaria, is a very solid choice. Number 1, you deal damage, number 2, you're topping healing meters, and number 3, you have pretty important cooldowns to give it to your raid as well. Now, one more thing about Discipline Priest is that one of the ways they're healing is through shields, so you're putting powered barriers on your teammates, allowing you to absorb damage that comes in, and this is very good to survive, for example, one-shot mechanics, which many other healers simply can't. Instead of preventing damage, they are simply healing damage that you've already taken. Discipline Priests help you prevent damage and just allows you to take more hits. So imagine a scenario where you have a one-shot mechanic based on your health remaining. Nobody can heal through that because it literally takes away 100% of your health, but if you have a shield, that allows you to have over 100% of your health. So if a mechanic deals 500... No, okay, we have about 500,000 health in Mists of Pandaria. Let's just say a mechanic from a boss deals 500,000 damage, and you have exactly 500,000 health. No healer will be able to heal that because you are now dead. Meanwhile, if a Discipline Priest puts a 100,000 shield on you, you will survive that mechanic with 100,000 HP. Now, Discipline Priest has always been good to bring inside raids, and it's no different in Mists of Pandaria. It's still a good class to have inside raids. It's number 1 for a reason, it's S tier for a reason, and it's, if anything, it's just better than ever before, and in my experience, in my opinion, more fun than Discipline has ever been before as well, so definitely worth giving a try. Now, one more class that I'm going to put into S tier here is the Mistweaver Monk. Now, Monk has a lot of the same thing as Priest does. Number 1, you can do damage, number 2, you can heal a lot, and number 3, you can decide between actively being a healer or healing through damage, aka fist weaving. So basically, as a monk, you can be doing a lot of damage. We even saw, like, in the one tier list, or not tier list, but in the one log we looked at, where there were 9 discipline priests in the top 10, the only one that broke in with a discipline priest was a Mistweaver Monk. It is a new class to the game, has a bunch of cooldowns you can press, and it's a very good class as well. In the Monk class toolkit in general, or talent, you can also go for Ring of Peace, allowing you insane crowd control as a Mistweaver Monk, which allows you to effectively deal with adds inside both raids and dungeons, which helps with, once again, crowd control. You also have Paralyze for individual crowd control. You have a bunch of utilities you have access to as a Mistweaver Monk. You also have Life Cocoon that you can use to shield players as well. So, in my experience, Mistweaver Monks are a very good choice for a healer, and when it comes to raids, pretty much every single raid wants to have at least one monk, so once again, it's a good class to bring. Even if you, it's a very good class to bring, because once again, you can do damage, and pretty good damage as a healer. So if you bring both a Mistweaver Monk and a Discipline Priest, for example, they're both probably going to do about half the damage of a DPS plus heal a lot at the same time, in which case you basically got yourself one free DPS. So if you have 20 DPS, for example, 2 tanks and 3 healers, if 2 of those healers is a Discipline Priest and a Mistweaver Monk, you effectively have 21 DPS while having your healing bases covered as well. So by having these two, it just allows you to have less healers in the raid, but still healing and having more DPS. Or you can even 4 heal, but still have enough DPS to meet the DPS checks. Now, Mistweaver Monks are also good both in raids, dungeons, they excel at pretty much every style of content, but I do believe they're best inside raids. Next up then is Shamans. So Shamans is a very good healer to have in Mists of Pandaria as well. It is pretty much a pretty strong healer overall. You will very likely not top the healing meters, but you will be very close. You'll be doing competitive healing, and you have a lot of cooldowns available, which is what Shamans are so good for. They have a lot of cooldowns that help out the entire raid. You have totems that can also improve DPS of the raid. You're just an overall very good healer to have, and in my experience, every single raid wants to have at least one Resto Shaman in their raid, so you're pretty much guaranteed a raid spot if you go for Shaman. Now, on the other side, they're usually not the best healers to have inside dungeons. I guess that depends on your composition, so like sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Either way, Shamans are a very, very solid pick, but they're not quite as good as Discipline Priests and Mistweaver Monks, in my opinion, so I'm going to put them into the A tier. And one more class that also goes into the A tier is gonna be Holy Paladins. So Holy Paladins are not exactly, I mean, they're very good healers, but they're not quite up there when it comes to S tier healers to me, and they're right next to Resto Shamans when it comes to healing. Now, in this case, it depends a little bit on what you want. So, for example, for raw healing output, I would rank it like this, like Holy Paladins before Resto Shamans, but due to the amount of cooldowns Resto Shamans have, I rank them above Holy Paladins. So Holy Paladins usually has better healing output than Resto Shamans, but Resto Shamans has way more cooldowns available to them, and a much better toolkit, helping out not just themselves, but the entire raid. Okay, so with that being said, we have 2 more classes to put onto this list, so let's try to quickfire this, because I don't really have too many things to say about the next 2, other than the fact that they simply perform worse than the other classes, usually when it comes to raids. So we have Resto Druid, and we have Holy Priest. So for this, we pretty much have 2 scenarios. We can either do this, where we understand that Resto Druids are at the bottom of the A tier, or I can even go one step further and say that Holy Priests are C tier and Resto Druids are B tier. So in this case, the tier list would look like this, but either way, it doesn't really change much. The only thing is, rest of the druids are slightly worse than paladins and shamans in my experience, just because they don't hit the same numbers as a holy paladin, and they don't have the cooldowns of a resto shaman. So to me, they are inferior to both of them. So whether they are placed in the low A tier or high B tier doesn't really matter, but to give a visual clarification, I think this right here looks good. And then you have Holy Priest ranked into C tier, but I'm just gonna say that even though they are ranked here, they're still pretty good healers. We even saw at the beginning of this video, they are showing in the top 10 on the logs every now and then, but usually Discipline Priest is the way to go. So this is basically my tier list for healers in Mists of Pandaria. If you have any experience playing Mists of Pandaria as a healer, let me know. Did I do a good job, or am I absolutely cooked? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what your tier list would look like. I'm just gonna say, this right here is completely speculative, things could change, and they could even make some changes in Classic, even though they usually don't. So keep in mind that even though certain healers were good in 5.1 and 5.2, and even 5.3, things are changing in Classic WoW because we are running on 5.4, or the last patch of Mists of Pandaria. So once again, let me know what your tier list for healers looks like down below in the comments. And once again, it's a speculative tier list, so let me know once again your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys again in the next video very soon.